Have you ever stopped to think that everything you went through in life, those moments where you felt different, might actually have an explanation you never imagined? Today, I'm going to share my experience of discovering that I'm autistic only after becoming an adult. Now what? What do you do when your entire world starts to make more sense, yet it also throws you into a sea of questions? Finding out that I'm autistic only after becoming an adult was like picking up an incomplete puzzle, where essential pieces were missing, and finally finding them. When I got the diagnosis, I was hit with a mix of emotions, a huge sense of relief for finally understanding who I am, but at the same time, a gigantic fear of how this would change my life. A lot of people, just like me, only find out about their autism after going through several situations that seemed confusing, lonely, or even scary. This new revelation opened up my past in ways I never imagined. The first stage of self-questioning. If you've never questioned anything in your life, I envy your peace of mind. On the other hand, I questioned everything. And I mean everything. I questioned my reactions, my difficulties, and why seemingly simple things were so complicated for me. I questioned why I couldn't just be normal like others seemed to be. I felt this constant pressure from myself and from the outside world to act in ways that felt unnatural to me. In various situations, I'd find myself thinking, why do people react one way, but I feel completely different? For example, a loud party that everyone else seemed to enjoy could feel like a chaotic nightmare to me. Or, when someone would unexpectedly change plans, it could throw me into a state of anxiety that felt out of proportion. I didn't understand why things that seemed easy for others felt like Herculean tasks to me. I just thought I was inadequate. That feeling of not belonging was constant, and it came with a huge emotional weight. Throughout my life, hearing phrases like, "You're so shy, you overthink things," or "You're so meticulous, why can't you just relax," was common. These words became a sort of brand on me, a mark that I carried, which, in a way, influenced how I saw and behaved. I internalized all those messages and often felt ashamed for being too much or too sensitive. So, when I finally learned about autism, some of those marks started to fade away. The term autistic started to make sense in a way that nothing else ever had. It was like putting on a pair of glasses for the first time and realizing that what you thought was normal was actually quite blurry. Discovering information and connecting dots. It was during a conversation with a friend that I realized the experiences I was describing weren't as unique as I thought. He suggested that I look up information about autism in adults, and that's how my journey of self-discovery began. I spent hours reading articles, watching videos, and consuming everything I could about the subject. Every new piece of information was another piece of the puzzle fitting perfectly. I came across countless stories from people who shared similar feelings and experiences, and each story felt like a reflection of my own life. At one point, I found myself binge-watching YouTube channels run by autistic adults, reading forums, and even following threads on social media where people discuss traits and signs of autism that went unnoticed in childhood. I learned about masking, a common coping mechanism where autistic individuals subconsciously or consciously imitate social behaviors to fit in. This resonated with me deeply. I realized how much of my life I had spent masking, trying to act in ways that felt acceptable but weren't authentic to who I was. The diagnosis journey. The quest for a formal diagnosis wasn't simple. Like me, many people face challenges in finding professionals who are knowledgeable and willing to investigate autism cases in adults. It's as if society only believes autism can be diagnosed in childhood. I faced skepticism from some professionals who believed that autism was something that would have been evident much earlier. It took time and persistence to find the right specialist. For me, it was a process of multiple appointments, interviews, and evaluations. The professionals started by asking me about my childhood. Revisiting my childhood brought up a whirlwind of memories. Small things I had never given much thought to, like my discomfort with certain clothing textures or my need for a rigid routine, suddenly started to make sense. I remember being very particular about the feel of my clothes. If a shirt didn't sit just right on my shoulders, it felt like being trapped in something uncomfortable all day. The assessment was a mix of relief and discomfort. Relief from finally understanding, but discomfort from facing my experiences and accepting them. Being asked questions about behaviors and experiences that I had normalized for myself was eye-opening. It made me see how much I had adapted to fit in and survive in a world that felt foreign in so many ways. When I received the diagnosis, I was flooded with a sense of validation. Suddenly, all those feelings of inadequacy and strangeness had a concrete explanation. I wasn't weird or troublesome, I was neurodivergent. And that wasn't a flaw, it was a part of who I am. Now what? How to handle this discovery. After the diagnosis comes the big question, now what? The initial relief is quickly replaced by a sea of uncertainties. What do you do with this new information? How do you communicate this to the people around you? How do you deal with the prejudice and stigma surrounding autism? These are some of the questions that arise. For me, the first step was learning to be kinder to myself. For years, I was my harshest critic. I constantly pressured myself to be more sociable, to adapt to situations, to not feel so easily overwhelmed. Understanding that this was part of who I was brought a sense of freedom. I stopped trying to be someone I wasn't and began to embrace my uniqueness. Explaining it to others. One of the hardest parts was communicating the diagnosis to the people around me. I was afraid of not being understood, of being judged or labeled. After all, autism is surrounded by stereotypes. Many people imagine that all autistic individuals have the same characteristics, which isn't true. The autism spectrum is vast, and each person is unique. When I talked to my family and friends, I realized how important it was to educate them about what autism is and how it manifests in me. This conversation wasn't easy, but it was crucial for improving our relationships. Over time, the people around me started to understand my limits and needs better, and everything became lighter. I remember my first attempt at explaining it to a close family member. I was met with confusion and the classic, "But you don't look autistic." It was hard not to take it personally, but I soon learned that most people aren't informed enough about the wide range of traits within the spectrum. So, I took it upon myself to educate those closest to me in a gentle, non-confrontational way. It was an ongoing process, one that required patience on my part and willingness from their side. Professional life and adjustments. One of the biggest challenges for someone who discovers autism as an adult is dealing with the work environment. Many autistic adults face difficulties in jobs that require intense social skills or highly sensory environments. In my case, I began identifying my triggers and seeking strategies to cope with them. One of the first things I did was talk to my boss about the diagnosis. I was apprehensive, afraid of being seen differently. But the conversation went well. My boss was receptive and open to making some simple adjustments, like allowing the use of headphones to block excessive noise and having flexible work hours so I could take breaks when needed. I realized that being transparent about my needs was a way to ensure a healthier and more productive work environment. Of course, it's not always easy, as not every employer is understanding, but it's an important step to make sure you feel more comfortable and respected. Relationships and autism. Relationships are a minefield for many autistic adults. The difficulty in interpreting social cues and dealing with unexpected changes can be a significant challenge. In my case, I started to realize that many of the issues I faced in past relationships were related to autism. Learning to communicate my needs and boundaries clearly was a game changer. Healthy relationships require honesty, and part of that honesty involves recognizing our own limitations and working together to overcome them. This applied to all my relationships, not just romantic ones, but also friendships and family connections. I found that being open about my diagnosis helped people understand me better, and it helped me feel less pressured to perform socially. Learning to love yourself. One of the most important aspects of discovering autism in adulthood is learning to love and accept yourself as you are. I spent years trying to be someone I wasn't, trying to fit into molds that didn't suit me. Now, I understand that my neurodivergence is a part of me, not a flaw. If you've made it this far, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. My goal is to share my story so that other people don't feel alone on this journey. So, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave your comment down below. Your opinion is super important to me, and I'd love to hear what you think about this topic. Oh, and if you can, please subscribe to the channel. I'm preparing lots of great content to help more people who are going through the same process as me. And remember, everyone has their own time to discover and understand themselves, and that's absolutely okay. Don't be afraid to seek answers, because it can change your life for the better. So, let's keep moving forward together, and I'll see you in the next video.